Registration, it's definitely the right thing to do. If you're doing, and that's money service business registration. If you're doing any sort of OTC trading, in this current regulatory environment, it's absolutely the right thing to do. And like as I've said before, the key word is registration, right? As with state level money transmitter applications, you're applying, right? You're going through a process, you have to be approved. Registration for an MSB, for a money service business, is simply a registration, meaning you're just providing certain information to FinCEN, and they're coming back giving you a registration. So it's decidedly the right thing to do, 100% if you are a crypto exchange of any kind. If you're in the OTC business, totally makes sense as well. So the question becomes, what are my ongoing requirements if I am an MSB, if I'm a registered money service business? And there's a few things. Number one, it starts with having a written AML policy, okay? And this is something that you should go into having into registration with, right? Don't register as MSB and not have a written AML policy. And if you contact me, my contact information is below. I'll send you a sample. Just shoot me an email. I'll give you a sample one that you can use that's good for ICOs, money service businesses, anything you really want. But number one, first and foremost, have a written AML policy. And that written AML policy needs to identify your AML compliance person, needs to incorporate how you deal with SARS, suspicious activity reports, which I'll talk about in another section, another film, CTRs, currency transaction reports, and then also how you deal with certain KYC, right? Like your KYC is a subset of AML, okay? So KYC is really part of your overall AML policy. So that's number one. First and foremost, you have to have that, but going into MSB registration, you should have that, right? That's number one. Number two is the quote-unquote sort of audit requirement, right? And there's a lot of misconception about this, right? First of all, it's not even really an annual thing, it's a periodic thing. And, I advise clients on having this audit done at least annually, right? If you have a lot of volume, you can do it semi-annually, even quarterly, right? Like a lot of clients that I deal with that are in like the money transmission business have check cashing locales, places like that, where there's a high risk and they deal with a lot of currency, right? Actual physical cash. That's absolutely something where you want to have your audit more often than not. In the crypto world, right? For instance, if you're just like an OTC trader, periodic means more like annually, right? That's sort of a safe bet. And that audit, is composed of a few different things. Number one, a review of internal controls, a review of book record retention, 7 years, right? And then an overview of training, right? How you're training your compliance person. And the key thing to remember about an audit for an MSB is that it does not have to be conducted like an accounting audit, right? You don't need like an auditor or CPA to do it, or even really an attorney. What you need is somebody who's independent and not your AML compliance person do that audit. So even internally, in theory, you can have somebody do it, but it's best to have somebody from the outside. So ideally somebody too who has some clue about AML KYC policies, right? And what you'll want to do in those audits is to memorialize that audit, right? You want to have some sort of written conclusion, typically in like letter form, right? And it can even in simplified forms, it could be an email, but you want some sort of written memorialization that audit did occur. So in the event that FinCEN ever audited you, you'd have proof that you followed the written procedures and had an audit. But again, it's not an audit in the sense of like an accounting audit where you need a CPA. They're auditing your books and records. What it all is your internal controls, your internal AML controls. Finally, there is a re-registration requirement. There's a renewal requirement, and that's the December 31st of the second calendar year after registration, right? So effectively, every 2 years, you're going to have to renew your MSB registration. And finally, a big thing, record retention, right? And I look at this from two aspects, right? One, you have an obligation, 7 years, to really record certain cash transactions. But best practices, especially in the crypto space, is to keep any sort of identifying AML documentation, right? when you collect, a passport, IDs, keep that for as long as possible. You can keep it in electronic form if you have to, but keep it, right? And the same thing with your transaction records, right? Your ledger records. Keep those, maintain a system or create a system to maintain those records, because one, you just never know with crypto, right? I mean, it is a bit chaotic. It is a bit anarchaic, like in the sense that, you could be dealing with one person, but there can be some doubt. But you want to always carry the burden of proof that you followed proper KYC procedures and were dealing with who you thought you were dealing with, when it comes to any sort of crypto transaction. It's also going to help you with the IRS, right? With tax reporting. You get a ton of questions about tax reporting, like how do I calculate gains and losses and all that. And it all just comes down to record keeping. Meticulous, obnoxious, boring, repetitious record keeping, right? So that's sort of the fourth tenet of MSB compliance. But again, what you've got the audit, you've got the written AML policy, right, which is just a no-brainer. You've got your renewal effectively every 2 years, and you've got your record retention policies. And those are the four components of staying compliant as an MSB. So again, hit me up. My contact information is below in the bottom of the video here. Happy to give out a free, no obligation AML policy. Anybody who needs one, just shoot me an email, at@tracyfirm.com. Visit me, tracyfirm, TRACY firm.com, and I'll check you out later. Thanks.